And he ends up asking me to do this, that, and the other thing because he doesn't have a car. So he's driving me all around town, and he
So I
invents
got a
this
taxi
story.
now. Yeah.
You know, my name is suddenly Samuel, and I am his sponsor for his meth addiction, and he's going to his uncle and his mom and his dad and his dad's friends. I meet his whole family. They end up sharing their weed with me. So I'm sitting on this guy's front porch. So this guy, he has me driving around
Portland.
Yeah.
and this is so he's like, do you mind if I shoot up meth in my car? I'm like, you know what, I guess. And so we go.
I
You
mean,
were like,
I
you know
guess.
what? Well, yes, of course.
Why not?
like I am your servant today, sure, why not? So we go to the
My
park.
name is Samuel. Call me Samuel.
Yeah.
Uncle.
Well, all right. Welcome, you handsome devils. I'm talking to you too. But now, just some preface. This is my good buddy Lane.
Hello.
He taught me Jesus.
He's
Yep.
my good buddy too.
That's right. Jamie's here. Jordo is working or something. And we have a story for you. My good buddy Lane has been traveling the country for the last 45 days.
That's his full name.
Yep, Lane.
Lane
Has
for
been
short.
traveling the country in the coolest circumstances I've ever heard in my entire life. By far the coolest I've ever seen. Usually it's when you say, oh, I'm traveling the country, I don't have a lot of stuff, you know, technically I'm homeless. You're like, okay, you got the backpack and you got the, did you shower last month, that kind of thing. But Lane has gotten, I don't know what to say. It's just the craziest story I've ever heard. And I'm blessed that you're in my life. I know we haven't talked in a hot minute, and I know that we all haven't sat in this room together ever, but let alone talk for very long, like over a year, I think, since our old apartment. So it's super awesome to see you, you colorful bastard.
Oh. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I made sure to make it red because it matched your red hair and the colorful suit you got on there.
Thank you.
But the thing I wanted people to get from this story, and we'll get into it in a sec, is that, and I've been saying this to you, to Jordo, for a long, long time, the simpler your life is, the easier and happier it becomes. And from your stories, it's a great example. And so let's start where me and you and Jamie left off. You were moving to Portland.
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Lane Harris, and I am. My pronouns are they, them, and I'd just like to give a shout out to the Pawnee and Osage Native American tribes who we are currently existing on. I thank you for letting us use your land so we can live our lives, really.
Yep.
So yeah, I moved to Portland, and I was a nurse during the pandemic, and I basically read American Holocaust, and I sort of I read about sort of the egregious things that the white people do day to day, and how and
yes, day to day.
essentially, like, I do recommend reading it, but I basically realized that the world is a really chaotic, messed up place, and I have been reading my Bible for a long time, and I when I was 21, I memorized the Sermon on the Mount, and I sort of wanted to memorize it again once I turned 25, I turned 25, or I'm 25 now, and I realized I got to the part where it said you cannot serve both God and money, and I sort of thought about that for a long time. I'm like, what does that mean? And I sort of realized that my entire life was based on my socioeconomic status, and I was miserable, and there was no love there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like all my the only reason I was in the apartment I was in, the only reason that I had my job, the only reason that I had any of my friends was just because I had the money for it. And if I was a billionaire, I'd be doing something else. If I didn't have any money at all, I'd be doing something else. So it made me really sad. And so I kind of like looked in the scriptures, and I read sort of where I could improve, and it just sort of hit me like it's entirely possible, or I sort of like wanted to ask the question, like, is it possible to live outside of that,
right,
to live your life without money? and so um, I read the Sermon on the Mount, and I also read Matthew chapter 10, Luke chapter 9 and 10, where basically Jesus sends out the apostles and he gives specific instructions to them. And so I was like, okay, well, I've been going at this for a long time. I think I'm able to do this. So basically that's just what happened. I mean, I sold all my stuff and I just started telling people that I was going to quit my job, go from city to city, telling people about Jesus. And that was
the start.
That was the start.
And the funny thing is, not funny. I don't know why I said that. But do you remember how me and you first, like the first thing we did when we became friends, like together consistently?
We were running and cross country,
Yep.
and then that was the biggest thing for
And
me.
then what we do after that? We would go home. We go to my house and we read that Experiencing God book for like a couple months.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, we
I
did.
still
Yeah,
have
we
that-
did. We did a mentorship, and we had a little contract that we signed saying we were going to do it, and it
Yep.
was all very nice.
Yes. Well, hello, business savvy. I guess that should have been a key indicator. I'm like, I have a contract for you. You're like, aren't we just reading a book?
Yeah.
I'm like, no. We want to be accountable.
Yep.
But I remember that very vividly, and I still have all the notes, all the stuff we talked about. It's somewhere in, I remember I was moving, and it got kind of shuffled, and I think some of the pages ripped out. But I still have the book, which is a great book, by the way, if you want to really dive into Scripture and just really go more in depth. Experiencing God is a great book.
Mm-hmm.
And you picked it out because you read it prior, I think.
Brandon Blackman was, I think,
Yes.
sort of leading most of that. Experiencing God, like that's definitely a pretty influential book still in Christian circles.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a. I don't know. I don't remember a whole lot about it actually.
I don't, like I said, Jamie, you mentioned this about the memory and recalling that memory, and it gets kind of hazy over time.
But it's all important, your journey is so long, and every single thing is valuable to learning. So
Right. And I don't remember any of like the text or the questions, but I remember the moment. I remember the experience. I remember being with my friend, being close to God, like you said,
Yeah.
where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. Jesus is there. When you broke that down, you were just in the car casually. You're like, yeah, heaven's here because wherever Jesus is, that's where heaven is. And we both went. We both just lost it. We're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's like that.
and now, okay, so the story goes, you decided to make the step. You said, okay, I'm going to do it. And then this made me laugh because we're talking about God. And who gave you the hardest time?
Oh yeah. So I sold all my stuff, and I had my car and just some personal items. And yeah, basically the instructions from where I was reading was just, go city to city, telling people the kingdom of heaven has come near to you, and find a worthy person in that city and stay in their house. And if give them your peace, and if their peace remains on them, then you stay in there, you eat what's set before you, and if not, then you just tap the dust off your feet and you move on. And if you're persecuted in one city, then move to the next city. It's very simple. Carry no money, wear no shoes, carry no stick, carry no bag, carry no bread. And the only thing that's missing is he sent him out 2 by 2, so I need another person to follow me around and do what I do.
Hello, viral clip.
But it works. And it absolutely works. So that's what I do. I go city to city, and I find a worthy person in that city, and I just ask them, can I have a place to stay? And and don't go door to door. That's another thing that he says. So I enter a city and I find
that's
someone
good.
on the street. I go into a business, ask someone there. I knock on one door in one house, and I always try to go to a church, because you're supposed to go to the quote unquote lost sheep of Israel, however you want to interpret that. So that's basically the formula. It's not that hard, but it works, and I always get a place to stay. I always get showered, and I can wash my clothes, and there's plenty of food, plenty of water, and not only that, but they end up giving me more than that. People have given me gas. They give me jewelry. They give me I got a cool little device where you can like put THC cartridges on there and you can charge it up and smoke THC out of it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, be careful of that with that vitamin E acetate or whatever in those little pods.
And Chase gave me a lovely collectible knife. I really enjoyed that gift. So
Yeah, it's a little illegal. Don't tell anyone. Well, I don't know. Is it illegal? I bought it on Amazon. I bought it on Amazon. But and that's the thing. Whenever, like for me, before you came here and shared the experience, and like I said, we'll get into the stories because they're fucking insane. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want to be simple. I want a house, small, paid off, car, cheap, paid off, right? That's simple. But that's simple, right? That's literal, like as simple as you can get. You're like shelter, food, water.
yeah.
And through that, and then like, for example, the Korean woman, just absolute kindness comes from people.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're not, and when we were going through this and I was trying to process it, I'm like, I hope he's not using Jesus as a platform to get anything. And you're not. You're just trying to live as simply as you can and just experience which is what you do. You bring out the best energy through people. And so when that resonates with them, they go, wow, it registers on a different level. And then people forget what they have. They forget what it means to have a nice, I got this new 2020 BMW. It's so great. And then you're like, what's better? Being kind to other people, helping other people, right? And it totally makes you forget that. So you're doing, and ironically, you didn't even mean to. You were just like, you know what? I want to be closer to God. I want to live as simply as I can. And we're going to go across country and do it.
Yeah, basically, I just wanted saved from the empire. It's like whatever you want to be saved from, I believe that Jesus can save you from it, whatever that looks like. I think that's what he does with all of us to an extent. And for me, I just wanted to be saved from this life where I was essentially, there was no love and there was really nothing to look forward to. But now I have a hope and a future, and I am very much happy and enjoying myself.
And not to get too dark and cynical with it, but all three of us in this room have had experiences where it's been like, I don't want to be here anymore. Mm-hmm. There's no love. There's no connection anymore. There's none of this. Even if they're right by you.
It's all in the heart, really, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
Because we get so caught up in material things. We get so caught up in other people's approval. We get so caught up in expectations that we often fail to look deep inside of our own selves, like where it starts,
And that's exactly where I was. I was like, listen, none of my goals are happening. I'm not going to achieve any of them. No one's going to like me. No one's going to be there for me because I can't be there for them financially, blah, blah, blah. You follow the rabbit hole. You get down to the bottom. And next thing you know, you're, like I said, for me it was, and again, you said it was common in their young 20s, in your early 20s, because all that kind of hits you and you're like, well, I can drink now. Mm-hmm. And then you just bury yourself in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, bury yourself in it. Like, well, I didn't share this part. You okay there?
I'm trying to figure out this mic. I sound. Oh, there we go. That's a lot better.
Yeah, you got to talk like
I need to hold it like a singer at a karaoke bar. I just got to hold it with both hands nice secure. Got to do with it.
Oh.
James Silvers. Check out my Instagram.
Right. Well, and I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, okay, that's where I was going. So everyone has different levels of why they feel, and it's very common. I didn't think it'd be that common, is suicide.
Yeah.
I mean,
just depression and anxiety is so common. I think it's in everybody to some extent.
And I think for me, I had to hit the bottom, and then I had to, thank goodness my family and parents were there to help me and kind of put me back on my feet. And like I said, I was going to work and I was doing what I was supposed to do, but I wasn't obviously feeling fulfilled. And then I found out who I was, what I was supposed to do, and at least you guys can share your input on who you are. But for me, I have to be busy. So like, what makes me happy is constantly doing something and then having a success at it. So like, whether it's the episode and then we film it, I feel great. Then the next day I edit it. It's awesome. It looks amazing. And I post it and I feel really, really happy. I'm furthering progress. I'm developing a new skill of using Adobe Pro, which I've never used before. I just thank God for YouTube and the internet. And then, so I need to continually move forward in some kind of progress on a goal that I have.
Isn't it ambition? Wanting to always be busy?
I guess so.
Yeah, because you feel like you're making progress when you're busy.
And that was something else I felt that, because I knew that was there. But at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a 6-year-old. But at the time he was 4. He was growing up, about to be in kindergarten and first grade now. But I was thinking, okay, well, I'm not giving enough attention to him. I'm a shitty father because I have high ambition. And I'm like, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be all about the kiddo. And then what are you doing? You're just letting him down, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't feel that way. He's a kid. He loves me to death. So it's just kind of like learning to balance that was part of the process. Learning to understand what makes me me was part of the process. And then same with you guys. We all have a process. And then now Lane's on this journey and he's loving it. He's changing lives and changing his life through other people. And the best story, was the first one you told me, was how you use these skills to talk to that Korean woman in Colorado. So that's where we'll start, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Every day it's something new, but I let's see. I arrived in.
Oh, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
You turn that way a little bit. I wanted to see your beautiful face.
Yeah, sure. I arrived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I went up to this Methodist church. And I tried getting in, and it was locked. And I asked a guy who was just kind of standing out there. He looked like he was involved with it. If I could have if he had a place to stay for me, if I could stay with him. And he said no. And he said he didn't know anyone. So I drove a little bit farther down, and I went into this random strip mall, and there's a salon there. And I walked in, and there was this short Korean lady named Pak Suk, and she. 60 years old, about 5 feet tall, really, really joyful, and she was cutting this man's hair. So I walked in and I asked her if I could have a place to stay, and she said, well, I have a customer who owns a hostel, and I said I don't have any money, and she laughed at me, and I'm like, I've never had someone laugh at me after me telling them I don't have any money. And so she took me
Silly boy.
She takes me to yeah. So she took me to the back of her salon, and there was a couch with a pull-out bed, and there was a microwave, and there was a fridge full of food. And so she sits me down on the couch, and I'm sitting there, and she pulls a table up in front of me, and she hands me this chopsticks, and then she gives me a feast. She pulls out this fish and this beef jerky and this like pickled ginger and pickled beets and tea and bananas and all this stuff. And I'm stuffed. And this is like literally, this is 11:30 in the morning. And
she's like, it's about lunchtime.
I guess so. And
It sounds like she was ready for you.
Yeah, I think she was. And then she said, well, I gotta go cut more people's hair. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go explore. So I went to this trail, and I don't know, climbed up this big rock, and I smoked some cannabis, and I just chilled for a couple hours, came back, and I just sort of hung around, and it was like 8 p.m. and she let me just stay in her salon, essentially, and she went home. So I was in this salon by myself, sleeping on this pull-out couch, and
she left you in her shop.
Yeah, she just left me in the shop with the back door unlocked, and just
oh, silly boy, I leave it unlocked for you.
Yeah. It was very strange, and she left me some food a little bit, so I stayed overnight there, and then the next morning, she comes into the shop, and she gives me more food, and she fills up my gas tank, and then I left, and we're Facebook friends, and she still keeps in contact with me. She called me today, just checking in, see how I was doing.
Yeah, she called, and you were like, a very important phone call, and you were like, that was the lady. She was so nice.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's great. So and that's another thing too. A lot of, like I told you, a lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, it's still. I know it's red and blue, which is ironic, Democrat and Republican, but people see that split so much, and I'm like, I know there's good everywhere. And when I say everywhere, you've been everywhere. California, Oregon, Kansas. Yeah. I mean, everywhere. Arizona, New Mexico.
Yep.
You've been going everywhere. And this is for 45 days. And it's been super successful. And now, another question I had was, you had a lot of these stories. Actually, what about the crazy guy, the meth guy?
Yeah.
Talk about the meth guy. Talk about the meth guy.
There was like 3 days into my journey, and I arrive in Albany, Oregon, and I try to get a place to stay and I can't, so I just kind of like go to the local park and I light up some cannabis, and I read my Bible or whatever, and it was fine. I was feeling good, and this dude with this cart comes up to me and he just starts talking to me, and we become friends, and I ask him like, hey, can I stay with you? And he's like, oh yeah, I have some tents, I have some food stamps if you need some food or whatever. I got plenty of water. And I'm like, okay, well, this is extremely easy. Like, he came to me, and then this
you're like, this is gonna be a great experience.
and I think it was going to be a good experience, but this other guy came up and he was just on his bike or whatever, and he and I get to talking. He's really friendly, so we go to he says that he can go, get me some food. So he goes in my car and I just drive him. We go get food or whatever. And he ends up asking me to do this, that, and the other thing, because he doesn't have a car. So he's driving me all around town, and he invents this story. I got a taxi now. Yeah. My name is suddenly Samuel, and I am his sponsor for his meth addiction. And he's going to his uncle and his mom and his dad and his dad's friends. I meet his whole family. They end up sharing their weed with me, so I'm sitting on this guy's front porch. So this guy, he has me driving around
Portland.
Yeah.
And this is so he's like, do you mind if I shoot up meth in my car? I'm like, you know what, I guess. And so we go.
I guess.
Well, yes, of course.
Why not?
Like I am your servant today. Sure, why not? So we go to the park.
My name is Samuel. Call me Samuel.
Yeah.
Uncle Sam.
And I'm Uncle Sam now. And so he straight up just like pulls out this hypodermic needle and he's injecting this liquid into his veins. And I'm like, what am I getting myself into? So I ask him like, hey, can you give me a place to stay tonight? He's like, okay, yeah, fine. You can stay with me tonight in my
okay,
house.
Fine. You're like, I've taxied you everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm Samuel, your sponsor. I just met your family. We're practically married.
Essentially, yeah. And, he's like saying, oh, you're my best friend. I love you to death. Like, blah, 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 blah. And the cool thing was that after he has me driving him all around town all day turns into night, and he's still like, and every single time we pass by anyone on the street, he has to stop me. He's yelling at me, stop the car. I'm like, why? I don't want to. He's like, stop the car. And he like, he'll roll down the window and he'll shout at this person. And it doesn't matter like what it is. Like, he'll just say hi or whatever. How's your day? You want to get in on my pyramid scheme? You want to hear about my tattooing skills? It doesn't matter. And the cool thing is that he did end up taking me to this nice little spot by the Willamette River, and there were these people there, and there was a fire, and they gave me a pillow and a blanket, and they gave me, they shared some of their weed with me.
Did you have a tent?
Nah. It was just outside. It was in the summer, so it wasn't that cold.
Now, is that when you talked about hanging out with two folks at the lake, and like they gave you like water and
yeah, these people gave me water and food, like everything. And so I give this guy my phone because he wanted it to use as a flashlight, right? And so I go to sleep and I wake up and everybody in this camp is gone. The place is trashed, and I'm like, I don't have a phone now. And so I just chilled out by the riverside for like half the day, and I read my Bible, and it was a really great time. I looked in the passage. Jesus said, someone takes from you, just don't worry about it, don't seek it out, just keep going. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
And so eventually I stopped waiting and realized that these people weren't coming back, and I just got in my car. Well, I end up driving to Syracuse, Oregon, and I meet a couple guys in the park, and they're pretty chill, and I was feeling kind of hungry, so I asked one of them if we could go eat. So we went out and ate. And then I went to this guy's house, and then I was like, hey, can I check my Facebook? And I checked my Facebook, and there were these a couple monks that they're married. Shout out to Finn Buckley and AJ Buckley for putting me up for the night. Anyway, they gave me their address. So I was like writing the address on my arm, writing the directions on like a piece of paper because I didn't have a phone to get anywhere. And the guy that I was hanging out with, he looked at me. He was like, you're living a real life Dungeons and Dragons adventure, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah.
You said absolutely.
And so I went there and I sort of explained my situation to these two monks, and they were like, "Oh, we have a phone, like it's an iPhone 4." And
you said, so you're telling me it's up to date?
Yeah, I mean, And so we got it hooked up, and it was good, and that's what I used for a few weeks. And it wasn't 24 hours after one phone was stolen that I got another one. So it was just cool how people have really come through for me.
Yeah. And what I wanted to get to that story because, so a lot of this, and obviously this is not any negative, but a lot of this plays into, like, weed is always involved.
Yeah.
What is your, I guess let's just to go to take on weed. Does it affect the kindness of strangers more or less? How is it involved in these circumstances?
Yeah, if a person has weed, you can trust them.
Okay.
Like, it's that simple. Like, if they have weed,
Just like,
like you can ask them for anything. I don't know, like, and I don't think that it has any salvific value. It's not a necessity, but I think for me, it's like my
no parking.
It's like I have a list of priorities that I have to accomplish every day,
Careful,
right?
it's not gonna
I gotta get food, I gotta get water, I gotta get shelter, right? And then my other priority is get some cannabis, just because I'm
Well, and I've been curious about the use and the kind of the war on drugs. It came from Joe Rogan's been hitting it a lot. A lot of people have been hitting it, and one of the episodes he just has. Excuse me, this guy I was telling you about who looked into psychedelics throughout history, involved in ceremony, involved in religious activity, all this kind of stuff. And you kind of went to the European countries and kind of tested all this stuff. And a common thing, it still happens in, like, for example, breweries. They get something called ergot. Have you heard of this? That grows on the wheat. It's like, they use it to extract LSD.
Okay.
And it grows very common on there, but now you can cut it off and you're good to go and it can grow on wheat. And I was like, really? And then they found that most of the mead from the old glasses, they could test it. And they go, okay, there's some there's some ergot in here. And so they baked it into the bread. They drank it in the beer. So anything that had wheat, that usually was in there. And then the second thing was, another thing would be when you go to, like, a big community where they had a religious gathering, they would commonly drink wine, but in the Greek text in the New Testament, when they talk about wine, and there's another word, so wine was like everyday wine you drink and you regular, but the other one was like the word for this kind of blended concoction of whatever. And so this guy decided, okay, I'll go into that and I'll look into it and I'll go deeper and find out how far back this rabbit hole goes. And so back in that time with the Roman Empire, you thought it was kind of just like, okay, it's from where it is all the way to like Iran, Iraq, kind of that big Middle Eastern area. But then he was finding it over in Spain, and they were doing the exact same like ceremonies, and so he was blurring the lines of how far does communication actually go back in the day, and then he followed that rabbit hole, and then turns out the word they used sometimes in the Greek text in the Bible was that concoction. Yeah. And then what do we do as communion? We take the bread and the wine, and then, okay, we got some bread here. Who knows? Maybe some ergot in there, a little bit of LSD. And so it was kind of like he went into the depth of how much it was like experiencing God in the flesh kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so it was, and that was kind of throughout history, that it was these psychedelic materials and the use of mushrooms and things like that in everyday culture wasn't that far-fetched when it came to ceremony and experiencing this. Some people experienced an angel. I think the common things was like angels, aliens, or some kind of spiritual entity around them of love and light and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so it was kind of eye-opening to understand that it goes way farther than you think it goes. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like common practice, like, oh, but it's Tuesday, time to,
it's really interesting because for the longest time, religion has been limited to Puritanism and the idea that pleasure is like bad, that you should be strict and disciplined, and that's good. There's been a constant attack, I feel, on just like hedonism, doing what you seek for pleasure.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, that's that's something that that I would really advocate for, is really you being allowed to change your brain chemistry in however way that you see fit, so that you can feel comfortable.
Well, and the other strange fact came from it is that a lot of, I don't want to call them out, but Joe Rogan said it, a lot of these UFC fighters, so they will microdose or have a little bit more of shrooms before a fight because it zones them in.
Mm-hmm.
So not enough to make them go like psychedelic crazy, but enough to zone in. They feel more in tune with the moment. They're, like you said, you had shrooms, you read the Bible, now you know the Bible very well. So they go in, they take shrooms, they fight very well because all that is back in their mind and it connects things in a different pattern. So now, and they don't really test for it. They test for performance enhancers, not really shrooms.
Yeah.
So
if you read the Bible a lot, I do recommend taking shrooms because that'll really focus you in on what's important, what you need.
And I don't think, and that's where it kind of got me leading. It's like, okay, like I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I believe in my faith, I believe everything that I and that God stood for. Absolutely. But it doesn't make me question God in the idea that people were taking psychedelics to maybe experience what they were going through. And then of course the Bible, it's we're humans. It's impossible to write a book and go through the lineage and not have it pass through a lot of hands and do things. Now I'm not saying that it can't be, that it hasn't been changed or whatever. I'm not saying anything negative about the Bible. I'm just saying that it doesn't surprise me that psychedelics played a huge factor even in Christianity when it came to experiencing God or something above us. Mm-hmm. And so, I tied that in with weed because a lot of people are advocates for weed. I've never been high my entire life. And that's only because I have a kid to worry about and, job, and we live in Kansas, so it's really, really strict. Mm-hmm. So things like that. So, but if it doesn't make you, if you do it this way, the Vikings would take shrooms, then they go raid a village. Okay? But they'd be nuts. They'd be crazy. That's why they were like, oh, that's why they're so violent. I'm like, no, it got them zoned in. Like the fighters get zoned in. They're like, we're gonna do it. Like they go nuts with it. But I think that there's a lot of stuff that, dude, I went to the psychiatrist and he was just like, he goes, you having some anxiety? I'm like, yeah, just a little when I go to the grocery store. He's like, do you want some Xanax? I'm like, and I looked at him straight up. I go, it's that easy? That's what I said to him. He goes, if you need it. I'm like, it's a benzodiazepine. I'm like, I've heard a lot of negative. I go, I just told you I had alcohol abuse problems and was addicted to alcohol. Now you want to give me a benzodiazepine. I'm not saying you're not a professional and they aren't professionals in their field. I'm just saying there's got to be some kind. They need to study something because it just seems like weed is involved in the story. There's kindness. There's love there. I don't hear anything negative about weed other than the first time you do it, you puke. I've heard that over and over again. The first time you do weed, you will throw up. Is that true?
No.
Oh, well then it's a lie. So you never know. But
let's all try weed.
Yeah, right. Let's videotape.
Let's try it. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it right now. But it doesn't surprise me that psychedelics and altering brain chemistry was a big factor when it came to even the Gospels themselves and other further religion of. They obviously you have Greek mythology, you have a bunch of other different types of religion that came into play, but weed was a big part of these stories, and I was like, I wonder if that has to do with the kindness of strangers.
Well, most of the people that I come in contact with are pretty, I would say, centrist to conservative Christians.
Do you want a fiddle thingy? In my fanny pack, I've got this thing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I was like, if you want that, I got the little spinner.
I am now holding a relic from the mid-2010s. It is a fidget spinner.
My turn with the Hot Wheels.
You know that lady got screwed by millions of dollars out of that thing. She made it for I think her autistic cousin or something. Because oh, he needs something to do all the time. And so she made that for him, and then someone caught wind of it that it was really popular. And then the Chinese go, we can manufacture that very quickly. And then got it, patented it, and then she lost all that money for that 2-year span of how many times people bought that thing. I bought that from China. It was $3. And it's lasted this entire time. Anyway, back to that. What were you saying about weed and the kindness of strangers?
Oh, yeah, I mean, weed, you can take it or leave it. Really, no one is disqualified from following Jesus and doing what I do, because that's kind of the point. Is he's a very inclusive God. So ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock on the door will be open for you.
Absolutely.
So that's just what I ask for, and I get it. And
well, and you had that. What was that place in California you really liked with the natural spring?
Yeah, well, I woke up in Wolf Creek, Oregon. Not the Wolf Creek, Oregon, just a Wolf Creek, Oregon. And I was driving south, and I found a couple of hitchhikers who were just sort of sticking their thumbs out. So I get them in my car, and they're really nice, and they share their weed with me as usual, and they were like, well, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know, but I do want to I want to learn how to perform miracles. They're like, okay, you got to go where we're going, Shasta, California. Shasta, California. And
I've
so
never
we went
even
there.
heard of it. I've never heard of Shasta.
And they take me to this big just campus full of just hippies and people doing yoga, and there's like this there's this eternal spring. They call it the fountain of living water, and I bathed in it, and I took a drink, and I met this man named Griffin, and he was 24. Actually, I lied. He was 24.
24.
And he and I really hit it off. I told him sort of what I was doing. He was like, yeah, man, Jesus is the only way. I'm like, okay, so you get it. And so he and I spent, several days together camping on Mount Shasta, and we climbed the mountain, and we just had a really good time. And he was like, well, how about I take you on a tour around California? I'm like, sure, let's take my car. So he actually donated his car. He just like left it in a parking lot and made some phone calls, and he just got rid of it. And then he sat in my driver's side seat, and for 3 days we went to San Luis Obispo, Santa Monica.
Or just aim it a little up towards you. There you go. No, I just meant turn it that way. There you go.
Is this good?
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Look at that beautiful voice. So you guys are touring California?
Yeah, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Long Beach, really all those locations. And I was just sitting there, and we had a really good tour, and he was taking me all these places we could stay. And, I stood in the ocean, swam in the ocean, saw a lot of ocean, a lot of beach, a lot of, I saw Oakland from a mountaintop. I saw San Francisco.
Holy cow.
So it was a really beautiful experience, and really, it cost me almost nothing as usual.
Yep.
And after a while we reached his destination, and we parted ways, and then I started traveling to my next spot, which happened to be somewhere in Arizona. I forget where. Yuma, I think.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, and you were like, it was a spring. There's water all the time. And I'm like, but mine comes out of the tap. like I remember going to like Colorado. I'm like, oh, this natural spring, it's really healthy for you. The minerals, the vitamins. And I'm like, I get it from the fountain. I'm like, yeah. I get it from, it's crazy how much you can get just from Earth, Mother Nature. I was kind of shocked. I'm like, I forget that's where it all comes from. Like, all of this stuff that we have in here came from material that was on Earth that we either made and we can mass produce this thing, or it's a plant, or it's water, or, it's just weird that we float on this. What's the example? The Earth is our spaceship, and we're floating, soaring actually, through the universe, and we're just flying on it, just with no care in the world. Yeah. We're like, but we got to make money. You're like, you're missing the big picture. You're missing the big picture.
Yeah. Money is kind of a way to sort of create scarcity when it's like, scarcity doesn't exist. Like,
right.
The kingdom of heaven never went anywhere. You can enjoy as much of life as you want, as long as you as long as you do it right. And I'm not saying I do it right, but I'm saying
it's the process for everyone has a process, and it's just where you get is where you get. That's like what'd you say? You said you have to live with you at the end of the day, basically.
Yeah.
You're only responsible for you at the end of the day. Unless you have a kiddo, then it's different. But for the most part, us young people in your 20s, you're responsible for you and what makes you happy. And then
I mean, it's like you don't have to live with money. There's no rule anywhere that says you have to live a certain way, and you have to have an apartment, and you have to have a job. There's no one saying you have to. It just takes a little bit of persistence and imagination.
Well, and Jamie, you had the perfect example. I said the only person this would work with is Lane because you're nice, charismatic, you love people, and you love to help other people. And you have this essence about you, it's like a glow. You walked in my apartment, I'm like, Lane's here. Like, it was just like, it's a different atmosphere, a different vibe. And what'd you say in the car? You said he makes it simple or something?
He makes deep conversation, like really deep topics that are usually controversial, you know,
Yeah.
usually very polarizing, just casual, which I feel is very important. And it's something that most people lack these days because most people like to be controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you make it simple. So,
Yeah.
like you said, 2 sentences, you told us basically heaven's here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're like, heaven's where Jesus is at. Jesus is among 2 or 3 of us if you're gathered in his name. And I went, like I said, we went, whoa. I lost it. I had to think about it for a minute. I was walking my apartment like, so Jesus is here, right? No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, if you never have to worry about food or clothing or shelter or water or, you know, and if you never have to worry about those things, then isn't that heaven?
Right. And I don't mean to go religious or do a religious Christian spin with this in any manner, but it's just, it was nice to not have someone, I don't know, use Jesus in any kind of selfish manner. Because usually they're like, no, you listen, you sinner. And then they're like, it's usually like this, instead of like, come in for a hug, or like, how can I help you? Or how can I make your life better through even the simplest conversation? I mean, like I said, the reason I have all of this is because I love the conversations with you guys that have changed me. And like I told you before, it's all extra. Once you hit a point where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore, then isn't after that technically just extra? So it opens a whole nother like way of life. Like I said, even the shittiest day is a great day.
Well, I feel like a lot of people like to make the future scientific, you know?
Like
Whenever you
what?
think, like, you know, the future, you think science fiction, you think, you know, advances and, you know, human knowledge and discoveries in science. And, you know, well, that's great, and that does advance us as the human race. You know, how do you keep religion relevant? And, I mean, this is a question for you, Lane, because I know you've been on this adventure for a while. We have COVID going on right now, and a lot of people are sort of having to reset because this is changing a lot of things for people right now. Like, how do you face that? How do you, I don't know, how do you stay relevant? How do you keep Jesus relevant? And how do you, I guess, see this as a positive for society and just for life right now?
Well, I mean, the instructions are there, and they've been there, you know, since at least Jesus' time. You know, I think sort of Jesus came to sort of accomplish, bring the kingdom of heaven, bring these principles that have already existed to the wider world. And, you know, it's been 2,000 years. It's not, I mean, you can read one gospel in the span of an afternoon, no sweat. So it's not like the information isn't there. It's just a matter of just doing it. So.
Well, and the irony is that the hardest people that gave you the hardest time per se were clergy members. You said.
Yeah. So there was this one. A day where I was sort of going city to city, and I was looking out here and there. I probably asked a dozen people. I was knocking on doors. I was going into businesses. I was going into hotels everywhere, you know, asking for a place to stay, and no one was really giving me a place to stay. And so, you know, night was falling, and I ended up just walking into this night service at this church, and this pastor was standing up there, and he was talking about how all our possessions belong to God, and, you know, it's all used for our resources because in the end you can't take it with you. And in the same breath, he was saying that all his debts were paid, and his car was paid off, and his house was paid off, and he had a wife and children. And so I was just sitting there very patiently. And at the end of the service, his wife comes up to me and is like, "Hey, how are you? I'm good. I just need a place to stay." And she said, "Okay, well, let me talk to my husband." So she goes to her husband. Husband shows up. The pastor, I shake his hand, and we get to talking. And, he asked me what I was up to, and I said, well, I just need a place to stay. I'm just going city to city telling people how to get to heaven. And then he started arguing with me. I think he was kind of trying to convert me for some reason.
You're like, no. You misunderstand. You go, I know Jesus. I already have him in my life. He's like, no, you don't.
You can't explain. You can tell these people a million different ways, and they still won't believe you, it turns out. And so this pastor was arguing with me. He was like, well, what is the gospel? I'm like, the kingdom of heaven has come near to you. And he was like, I think he was like disagreeing with me or whatever, because he started explaining to me works righteousness, in church, when they're like, sin separates you from God. You can't work it off. You can't work your way to heaven. The only way to heaven is Jesus, and life with Jesus starts now, lasts forever. Just the basic stuff. And I'm sitting there very patiently nodding, and he was just really, I think, hesitant to sort of do what I wanted him to do, essentially. So I kind of turned the tables on him, and I told him some Bible, a bit of Bible.
I told him a bit of the Bible.
And I told him about the passage where it says, when the Son of Man comes upon the clouds in the glory of his angels, he'll separate the sheep and the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right hand, the goats on his left, and he will say to the sheep, well done, my good and faithful servant. Enjoy the inheritance my Father has prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. You saw me naked, and you clothed me. I was a stranger, you invited me in. You saw me sick and in prison, and you visited me. And the sheep will say, why did we do all these things for you? And he said, well, if you did it for the least of these, my brother, you did it for me. And then he'll say to the goats, enter into the eternal fire, prepare for the heaven, for the devil and his angels, for you did not give me something to eat. You did not give me something to drink. I was a stranger. You did not invite me in.
Right.
I was naked, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. And they said, well, when did we not do those things for you? And he said, well, if you didn't do it to the least of these, you didn't do it for me. And so I tell people, like, I fought this pastor to give me a place. I guilt tripped him into saying, listen, if you don't do this for me, like, bad things.
Bye-bye inheritance. Bye-bye.
And so he walked out the front door of the church, and he turned to his right, and there was a motel, and he walked into the motel, and he paid for my room, and I got a room.
Well, and that's the thing I also wanted to state too. You in high school, you were very smart. You were educated, right? I forget. Would you get you were at 4.0, right? Like you were straight A?
No, I mean, I made good grades.
Right. Okay. So you made good grades. You went to college. You have a bachelor's in ministry with a minor in performance piano.
No, I have a bachelor's in Christian Studies and Ministry from Auto University, and a bachelor's in music performance with an emphasis in piano from there, and then I also have a bachelor's in nursing. Bachelor's of Science in
So
nursing.
yeah. So you have your nursing degree. You have another bachelor's degree that you went to college for. Yeah. And you had a good job as a nurse in Portland, Oregon. Okay. Yeah. And then so essentially in the eyes of the world, you had everything. You dropped it and said, okay, I'm out.
Yeah, it all set up.
You said, technically I'm set for life.
Yeah.
And I feel like shit.
Yeah, I mean, I realized that my entire life was built on my socioeconomic status. There was no love, and I was consistently miserable. And I've been miserable for a long time, right? I realized, sort of going through puberty, when I was sort of realizing who I was and what my brain was doing. I realized, man, I don't have any friends. There's no love in my life. What is this? And sort of I just chalked it up to sort of teenage angst. I thought, well, I'd outgrow it.
Yeah.
And the years went on, and suddenly I'm 25, and I feel the exact same way I did when I was 9 years old. Something's happening. Something's up. Something needs to change.
Yeah.
And I realized the world was a chaotic, fucked up place. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to die. Yeah, very soon.
That's the very important narrative I want to stress. You're all going to die, so ultimately your happiness is up to you.
So what do you want to get out of this?
Oh, well, I want people to follow me. I want people to see what I'm doing, and I want to I want people to see me and go, huh,
I wonder if I could do that. Yeah. And it's like, I wanted to stress, he didn't mean follow you like, me and all my buddies are going to go, like have a group do it. I'm just saying, like, it's a perspective you're not going to hear from because society says that's stupid. You don't do that. Do what you did. And you go, well, I still feel like dog shit. Why would I keep doing that? Just because other people tell me to do that. And I think anytime you have the balls, basically, to overstep that and find out for yourself, you're only going to walk away with, you're going to walk away with something regardless. So, and like I said, my first thing to you was, did anything bad happen? And for the most part, you found kindness in a place where COVID-19's rampant. People are either divided or they don't want to help, at least from the eyes of all of us. For me, the moment you told me, I go, oh no. I'm like, you probably had a lot of bad experiences. You go, it's been amazing. And like immediately, like you walked away with something that you probably never would have had if you hadn't done it. And it took courage.
Well, is life not about building those relationships? I mean, you talk about following, I think relationships, like what do you plan on doing after this? Like, is that what you're devoting your life to?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty sustainable for me. So I guess my goal would be to be able to literally have nothing and get by.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where I am, because it's not perfect, but I go back and forth about that, because we live in a country where it's like everybody has a car and a phone, right? So it's like if I had nothing, people would probably end up giving me a car and giving me a phone and just putting me right back up where I needed to be. So
well, it's like that one dude. He made that TikTok with that song. I don't know what that. Where he's skateboarding, he's drinking cranberry juice.
Yeah. I remember that. And then that cranberry company bought him a car. Yeah.
I'm like, and then now everyone's doing it. It's like a big trend now. And he just, he's making the most out of the worst of my life's horrible. He goes, nah, I'm going to hop on a board. I'm going to drink some cranberry juice. I mean, I get, my metabolism's low. I don't know what he drank cranberry juice for. Maybe he liked it.
Yeah, well, have you heard of Mr. Beast on YouTube?
Yeah, I remember seeing the video where he had like 2,000 subs.
Yeah, he started as like a teenager, just like doing charitable, activities, and now he has like millions and millions of subscribers and millions of dollars, and he just keeps doing the same thing. Like, clearly people have the heart for this, they just don't think about it every day.
Well, and what I like about Mr. Beast is I heard about him when I was streaming, and someone with the name Mr. Beast popped on. And they go, you know who that is? And then I looked him up. But so that's the thing. He probably has millions in the bank. But all the videos where he buys cars and stuff, that's not his money. I guarantee you it's some company that gave him money to buy. So, like, for example, if I give you, okay, let's see, you're going to make a video about giving a car to somebody. I'm going to pay you the money to get the car, make the video. You're going to make money from the video. I'm going to get sponsored on your video that's going to go viral with millions of views. They're going to see my company name. They're going to come to, you know what I mean? It's all advertising. But yeah, it started out with like him just being charitable. And I assume he's the exact same way. I don't know the guy. You want to come talk? Come talk. But like I said, it's just, people have the heart to do good things. Like, it's not foreign. And a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to sacrifice my income or my time or whatever. And I'm like, that's the best thing you could do for someone. Sacrifice the thing you can't get back, which is time.
Well, the heart is the instrument of love, right? And it says in the Bible that everyone has God in them. So everyone should have that bit of love in them,
Yeah.
I guess you just got to find it.
And like I said before, it's just part of your process. However you, like I said, right now, I have this fanny pack on. What happened was, I didn't do it because it was fashionable. I did, but I didn't. What I did was, I went into work one day. I had my cowboy boots on. I wore my Hawaiian Scottie Pippen shorts that were above my kneecaps. And I wore a Spider-Man shirt.
By the way, you know that wearing your shorts above your knees is like in now?
Now it is, because I did it. I made it. But I did it before it was a thing.
Okay.
Because like 3 years ago, I bought these pair of shorts that were on sale.
Before Lane told me to do it?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it was like 3 years ago. It was like when I 3 years ago, I went to H&M and I bought a pair of these shorts. And I'm like, I look pretty good. And then I bought a pair of swim trunks that were that tight, and I was like, I look really good. And then after that, it just stuck with me.
Shoot, man, why are you wearing sweatpants?
Because it's lazy day. I had to clean and all that stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, I wore the boots, I wore the short shorts, and I wore the shirt that was a Spider-Man shirt that didn't match, but it was all colors, okay? My work is a place where happiness comes to die, okay? You go in there, everyone's like this. Oh, I hate to be here. I hate to work, right? So I said, not today, and I wore all that stuff. I didn't see a frown that day.
Yeah.
I saw all smiles. So I made those people at my work, the small people on my shift, feel good for that day. And I knew if I did all that, and then I said, you know what, a fanny pack, they're gonna make fun of me, but I'm not gonna see a frown. I'm gonna see a smile. Everyone had a smile. Everybody was like, "This, I feel so much better about today," right? And that's what I can contribute. I can contribute that. It makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. And then to top it off, they were making fun of me, and I'm like, would you make fun of this guy? It's over there. But I had a picture of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the 90s with a fanny pack. I said, would you make fun of this guy? And I put it on the table, and they started just cracking up laughing.
Now we're talking about like making people happy. Now, how hard is that? And like, why don't we do that more often?
Dude, this fanny pack cost me $12, and I had all smiles. The shift was great. It went by the fastest 8 hours of my life. Like, it's so simple to enhance your life by being kind to others and doing what makes you happy.
Wouldn't it be so great if the world just worked as one team or one family, you know? If we looked out after each other, not just played politics and sports every day.
Well, it's just that it would, but that's just the hard part about it. I think too many people are thinking in a selfish manner, like, oh, I have this house, big house.
Oh yeah, well it's
car.
no secret. The world runs off of materials.
Yeah, so
it's no secret.
The only way that would work is that goes away. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. Even in a pandemic, people were still like, my money.
Yeah, well, that's why bad things happen. That's why God lets bad things happen, because that's what brings people back together. When you're back to, when you're in a crisis, you're going to seek your basic needs. You're going to live more rudimentary. And you're going to, part of those basic needs, of course, is love.
Yeah.
Like, that's what strings it all together, I feel. And that's why I imagine doing something like what Lane does is so empowering. If, it doesn't, you wouldn't think, on paper that would be empowering. You think that'd be destructive, right? Like, why are you doing this? What are you doing with your life? And that's another thing, like, what are you doing with your life? You know, more often than not, they're going to ask, how are you making your money? What are you doing with your time? And chances are they're just going to want it to be productive. They're going to want to know how much money you're making, where you're living, your whole social status.
The whole idea of like being productive, I think, is really destructive to the human condition, because there's nothing to produce. Like everything that you need it already exists. Yeah. You just got to ask for it.
Well, what's the first question they ask you? Like if you meet someone, like for the first time.
What are you doing?
They're like, what do you do?
Doing this? Yeah.
No, they're like, what do you do? You're like, really? I'm based off my career?
Yeah.
And then you say something like this, and they go, oh, well. Like, I'm like, that's such a stupid starter question. Like, I'm like, I'd be like, I don't actually, if I meet someone, I just, like, I get a feel for them. I don't care what you do.
Yeah, why don't more people ask, who are you? What are you about? Why don't people ask that?
Because society says, well, you got to have a high-paying job. You got to have all this nice stuff. It's materialistic shit. And as soon, like I said, the moment that, I don't know how you would even kill it. I don't know.
And we act like we don't have a caste system, and yet our whole country is built off of this social structure and built off of selling things.
Yeah. Well, there's a good book that it's on my Amazon list. It's called Selling is Human. And I guess in a way, it's true. You sell things every day. So, but I think when you do that and there's nothing for you to gain in return, like what you're doing, you don't gain. Like, yeah, you get your necessities because you need that to survive as a human being, but technically you're not getting anything. You're giving more to them than you're receiving. So I think that's what was really important to grasp from this and get you in here and talk about it, because, just to be completely honest, I would never be able to do this. Okay?
I get that from a lot, yeah, and it is impossible.
It's like for me, I can't. It's the weirdest thing. yes, I watch TV. Yes, I like to, on my lunch break, I'll watch Netflix. But for the most part, I need to be active. Like, I can't just chill, sit out, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, the last time I thought about a vacation was going to TwitchCon, right? Yeah, I get to meet fun people, but there's businesses there. Maybe I could develop this. I have an idea I want to work. Like, it's just a different vibe, and that's finding out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I couldn't do this. like, the cojones is on you, my friend. But it's just, and that whole concept of outlandish ideas is like, you know, a guarantee you a mass amount of people go, you're an idiot, you're stupid. Why you had everything? You had a job, you had this, and then a big thing was your student debt. Like, yeah, everyone goes to college, everyone has a student debt, and you were like, I was drowning in student debt, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, what's wrong? There's something wrong there. They're like, no, it's fine. Just keep going to university. It's great. Yeah, okay. How much a year? Yeah, it's great. And so, for example, my sister, and my sister's a genius. She's doing it. She's going to college to be a doctor. She's almost, I think her junior year?
Pre-med.
Yeah. And then after that, she'll go and specialize after that. And I'm still thinking, I'm like, you know how much money you're going to owe? And then the only thing they can come up with, which is what most people come up with, I'm not calling you out, Michaela, but
you just said her name.
I'm not calling
Shout
you out.
out to Michaela.
We are calling you out. This is a call out.
You're a part of the system.
Well, that's what and it just compounds because then your parents tell you, then you were told it, and you're young and you're growing, and you go, okay, well then I have to go here. And then your only example is like, well, you have a lot of student debt. And you're like, then I got to make a lot of money. And I'm like, but then in essence, you're not making a lot of money because a lot of that money is going to pay off this debt for who knows how long. So it's kind of just like, it's messed up. I don't like it. And so, like I said, we talked in the car, you don't have to go to college. Like, there's so much you could learn. And there was a guy on Fiverr, that freelance website.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I optimize my YouTube or whatever? This dude for like a week would charge you $100. And then it shows you how many you're like in the queue, how many orders they have. He had 56. So you're telling me for this week or this month, and if you did the month, it was more. I'm like, you're telling me he has 60 people that he's managing, and he does, and they were all positive. It's like a 5-star out of like a couple hundred people. I'm like, so he does it well. You're telling me this guy makes more than any of us would make ever doing something he just learned with the internet? Great. Bye, college. Bye. You don't have to go to college.
It's all about doing what you love.
Yeah.
Really, life is all about love, you know? Just do what you love. Be around people you love. Just stick with love. You know, if hate pops up knocking on your door, just let it pass. That's the way I see it,
What's
you
that,
know?
What's that verse? What's that verse? The greatest of these is love.
Lane?
Yeah. These three abide: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love.
Yeah. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were still talking.
You know, I remember reading somewhere in a book that the purpose to life is to live, to love, and to know. And I've kind of stuck by that for most of my life, you know?
Yeah, that's good.
You got to get out there and live, you know? Just have fun, you know? Enjoy your life. You got to love. You got to love what you do. Love the people you're around, you know? And try to love your enemies, you know? And you got to just get to know yourself and know your world, know what your life is about.
And I think, well, and the moment you do that, heat of warning, when you do that, you open yourself up to every possibility. Ultimate positivity, ultimate negative. Like, you have a whole spectrum. So take that with a grain of salt. Not all of it's going to be positive, but when you understand, like what you were saying, then the negative becomes not necessarily positive because it still sucks, but it still becomes something you can depend on and go
Learning is always a positive.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of negative things you can learn from, and in effect, you can turn into a positive.
And I mean, like I said, the only negative, you didn't tell me any other negative experience, but the only negative was meth man in your car.
And even then, that was a good learning experience. I don't think I've had an experience that was, I mean, I have had a couple, I guess, negative experiences, but they've always been good learning experiences.
Yeah.
I remember one time when I was in, I went to Sedona, Arizona at the bequest of Griffin, the guy that I met in Shasta, and when I got there, I kept asking the wrong questions. I kept asking if I could hang around some hippies because I guess I assumed there would be a big hippie compound like there was in Shasta. So I went up to this really nice couple and I asked them, if there were any, I guess, conscious people, and they said, well, we're all conscious here. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really answer my question.
You're like, I'm gonna punch you. You understand that? You're like, my buddy Chase gave me this badass knife, and you're about to be sliced.
But they were really nice, so I wouldn't slice them. But what I should have asked for is I should have asked for a place to stay because that's what I really needed. So the nice couple left, and I basically was running around this whole city looking for something that wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And I ended up having to sleep in my car that night. So I just pulled off on the side of the highway and I just slept in the trunk of my car that night.
In the trunk?
Yeah.
Like the part that opens and there's the seat. Did you put the seats down and like lay full out?
Well, you can unlock it from the inside. It's not that hard. But
in the trunk.
In the trunk.
I just go like this.
Yeah, did you have fold-down seats, or did you have to lay in a fetal position?
Very fetal position. Yeah,
sounds so uncomfortable.
It was 5 out of 10.
Was it well insulated?
Yeah, I mean it's fine. Okay. Like my car, it's spacious enough where it's possible you can sleep in it.
Wait,
so I'm not worried.
How can you
that.
breathe in there?
There's air. Okay. But I sort of realized like the reason that I quote unquote like failed, I guess, was because I wasn't seeking out the right things.
Yeah.
And so after that, I haven't slept in my car since.
The moment you ask a rich couple and they're like, of course, stay in the guest house. And you go there, it's like Wolf of Wall Street. There's just like this big brick mansion. And then to the side by the pool, there's like this house. You're like, I can stay here. And they're like, however long. They go, Janice. And then you come in like, breakfast? You want breakfast?
Yeah, I always I like to hit up like rich looking neighborhoods, but they never help. The richer you are, the more useless you are.
Now, why is that? That sounds like a paradox.
Well,
why is that? Gosh, well, we all kind of know, right? We know that the it's impossible for the rich to it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. And
is that true? Like hypothetically, if I don't know if I'd do it or not. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just leave it to Madden and be like, I hope I taught you well. Like example, if I became rich, I would think about what I would do. 2 years ago, I would have bought everything in the world. I would have bought the biggest house, the nicest car. And then I realized that's all just to be flashy to other people because I want you to approve me because I don't like myself, right? Very basic. Now, in this state of mind, I'd probably just want the simple house for my kiddo, just a car to get by, the basics. I don't know what I'd do with that much money. I really have no idea. Mm-hmm. Like in this moment in time. Back then, I would have done it to impress other people, make you look at me, especially with like my self-esteem was never there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Until probably last year. So you hit your bottom peak. I go, okay, now it's time to climb out. You're climbing out. Now I'm above, and now I'm out of the well, and now I feel great, right? Now I'm like, I don't give a fuck if you like me or don't like me. Yeah, are you pretty? Yeah, great. But do you have anything underneath the surface? Right now, you look deeper. Now I have a lot of things to grasp from experiences and go, okay, now I'm thinking the bigger picture. I can't stand it when like at the gym, there was that really nice looking buff dude and he's like, yeah. And there was that pretty girl that walked by and then she's like, oh my gosh, I just worked out my core. It was incredible. And I'm like, I'd shoot myself. I'm like, I would not be able to do that. Like you need to match me in some way, I guess, or at least understand the ambition part. So it's just kind of you look a little deeper, but I have no idea what I would do with money if I had that much money.
Well, diamonds are forged in the fire. Yeah. Right? I feel like you just need a certain amount of adversity to really build personal depth and to truly discover your own image. And it's important to not only be able to accept that and be able to go through that, but also to be able to acknowledge that if you ever do achieve the level of success you're shooting for. Yeah. I remember there was a really nice service at the Heartland Church,
Yeah.
that we go to, and like about a month ago, and it was about, I forget which story, Lane, you'd probably remember, where these guys arrive on a boat, and there's this one guy possessed by demons, and they exorcise him. The demons leave and attach themselves to a bunch of nearby sheep
Or pigs.
or pigs.
Yeah, and then they go.
Pigs,
Oh, and
yeah,
the pigs,
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the pigs go.
And
they
he
dive off
asks
the-
if he can leave with them, because he wants to get off this wretched island.
Mhm.
But they say, no, go, stay here, go back home, and share what you've experienced. Because I was, Jesus on the boat.
Yeah.
Share what you've experienced with the people around you. And I feel like that's important too, because we both come from a small town
Yeah.
that I don't know about you, but I personally don't like to go back to, because it brings back some bad memories. But you're not supposed to fear that. You're supposed to accept that, acknowledge that, and respect the fact that that's where you came from. And yes, you've bettered yourself. You should help the people around you,
Yeah.
and you should stay humble.
And that's also why, and I know I talk about him all the time, but Joe Rogan's great because yes, he does have a lot of money, but if you talk to the people that are like close to him and people that like come on the show, he'll do things after, like Bert Kreischer was like, yeah, I was talking about getting into shape and doing this, and then he goes, and then not like less than a week later, I had a truck full of equipment show up at my house. And he goes, and the order said Joe Rogan. Just bought him all this workout. He goes, I can help you. He goes, if you want to get into shape, I'm your guy, right? He goes, call me, text me, whatever. I got you all this stuff. Only the best. He's like, I got you the treadmill. He goes, oh, what about the regular one that you run on that's flat? He goes, no. You want the one that's curved, that you run naturally on. He's like, you know how much that costs? He was like, it costs so much money. But he's like, I don't care. He's like, I want to help. And so, honestly, if I had money like that, I'd probably just help. I like to think that way, but you never know till you get it, I guess. But the important part is keeping people like you around. They'd be like, hey, fuckface, what are you doing? You're like, what's this car? I'm like, dude, I just got this brand new. He goes, you idiot. Why? It's cool, but then that only lasts for like a week. Like you get in a car, right? Like you drive a car, you're like, yeah, I love this thing. It's the best. But after a week, you're like, I guess it's just a car. Or I guess it's just a house. My favorite is when I see like the big mansion, and then they're like, how many kids do you have? They're like, 1. Like, you tell me there's 3 of you and 20 bedrooms? They're like, yeah. They're like, what's on this end of their wing? They're like, oh, we never go there.
Yeah, I feel like true, fulfilling enjoyment comes from the people around you,
Yeah.
I find, because I'm really into cars, right? And those are material possessions.
Or it makes you happy.
I have a nice BMW. I love the heck out of that thing. But
Right.
what really brings me joy is when I have friends like you and Lane around, and we can go for joy rides. We can go on a road trip, and maybe I can drive it fast for a little bit, or maybe I could just roll the windows down and just enjoy
push up.
music.
Or down.
That's when I truly enjoy my cars, and that's actually a large reason why I like cars so much, because I like to show them to people, and I like how it opens a lot of opportunities to go places and just have fun.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be about the item, it should be about the use of the item. There's not necessarily anything inherently wrong with technology. It's just the way you use it. It's the way you value it.
Right. Well, and I pitched it to you probably like a week ago, the van trip. I tried to find somewhere. They don't have that. So
They don't have vans? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, you can rent one, but it's going to
Yeah.
cost you an arm and a leg.
Right.
But I was Lane, you're on board, because you know exactly where to go. But my idea is just to take a week, right? I'm like, I don't get
That would be so awesome if we
all
could
my
take
responsibility is we're gonna take a
Lane.
week.
I'm up for this idea.
Lane knows where to go. I want to travel across country just like you're doing right now.
Yeah.
But
Well,
in a
Lane,
fa-
so you want to go down to the East Coast now? I imagine.
Oh,
right?
I just go anywhere.
Or
Just
just
follow me
anywhere?
on Facebook and Instagram. Lane.face. I'm Lane Michael on Facebook if you wanna. Because really, I'm just gonna go anywhere, just wherever I see.
Well, and the idea was, okay, I kind of tweaked it. I was like, okay, the idea was let's go like around locally in a van. You remember the scene from Anchorman 2 where they're on the back and then they're all like sharing memories, and the music's playing. And eventually they go, "Who's driving the car?" And they're like, "What?" And then it wrecks. But that'd be awesome. Like take turns driving.
Yeah.
Where are you going? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just we're gonna go everywhere. We're gonna go wherever we want for this next week and a half.
Yep.
And just experience something on a whole level with the people you love. You know, maybe booze up a little bit. You know, camping, by the way, no hotels.
Yeah.
You know, just like, okay, we're going to park the van at this campsite. We're going to park. We're going to experience it, and that's what we're going to do. Obviously, it has to happen either, like, really, really soon, like now, before it gets cold, or wait till the springtime. But
gas is really cheap now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling right now.
Well, me too, but, like, Lane can be like, "Yep, let's do it right now." But I'm like, do I have vacation days? Do I have enough time to request off? You know, it's now I'm like, if I could, I would do it right now. I'd be like, how much do we got? Let's pool together. How much is a van? Let's buy the van.
All right, we're leaving tomorrow.
I honestly would, but I think that'd be my next big adventure.
Yeah.
And I record the whole thing. Not the whole thing, but I record the moments. We make a montage, and then next thing you know, we're 60-something years old. Remember that one time we did that American Pie?
Yeah.
We did that American Pie adventure. Remember that?
You know, not gonna lie though, it would be great to go with you, Lane, because we've been thinking about this road trip for the last couple of weeks. If we could have you along, this could be not just fun, you know, on a friendship level, but on a spiritual level too. You know?
Yeah.
It'd be great to just go on something that's so memorable, like you said, that you can talk about for a while and you can learn from it and it can really build you as a person. And you know what? While we're on this subject, I didn't know that I was an extrovert until I went on my first road trip about a year and a half ago.
Uh-huh.
I really didn't. I didn't know until I realized that the best part of my road trip was when I got out of the car.
Yeah.
It wasn't driving. It wasn't the music.
Yeah.
It wasn't even necessarily the scenery. It was just meeting new people, you know? It was so exhilarating to just meet people. And I don't know if you'd call it a different culture, but just a different environment, just people with, you know, fresh minds, something to share, you know? It's just so special.
Well, I just thought of this just now. The people you met in Shasta, California.
Yeah.
That show, the new girl that we were watching?
Yeah.
You know Schmidt, the one who was at the party?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what happens is he's like OCD. He has to clean everything. He's like all uptight. And then he gets fired from his job. He goes down to the beach and finds a group like that. They're just playing bongos, like smoking some weed. And then next thing you know, he goes there one time, loves it so much. They go, "Where's Schmidt? He's been a week." He's just down there. He's got like the headband on, the glasses. He's like, just down there, and they're like, "We need you back because the apartment's a mess. The collapse of the dynamic of the apartment's falling apart." He's like, "No way, man. I'm not going back there." And then eventually he goes back because the show's got to go on. But it's kind of like that'd be so fun to experience for a little bit, like right off the beach, like the boardwalk.
Yeah. Ocean Beach, California, on market days. It's one day a week. It's like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and they have those where it's basically bongo night. Yeah. And there's 100 people that gather around, and there's actually a little lady that's been sitting there twice a week for like 40 years, and she hands out free food, and you know, you can just
That's insane.
You can just dance to some bongos.
But yeah, that's, like I said, that's all the questions I had. Do you have any other experiences you didn't share with us?
Any other experiences I can share? Well, again, if you wanna look up just what I'm doing, you can follow me on Facebook. But you know, I have so many stories that it's really hard to
Go through them all. Yeah.
I think one of the highlights I want to say was I was going city to city in Colorado, and I ended up in Johnstown, Colorado, and I went to this sort of small town church and Grace Community Church in Johnstown, and I met David Anderson, and I basically just came up to him, and I just told him, "Hey, I need a place to stay." And he's like, "Well, what are you up to?" I'm just like, "I'm going city to city telling people how to get to heaven." And he got really excited, and he was like, "Oh, okay, well, stay here. I'm gonna go call some friends, and he drove away. And so I was just kind of sitting there for an hour just playing the ukulele, just going, wow, okay, this is really cool. He comes back with his friends named Solomon. So it was David and Solomon.
Booyah.
And
Oh, biblical, you say.
and they were like, well, do you want to go to you want to go get something to eat? I'm like, yeah. So we went to a burger place, and we sat down, had a burger and fries, and it was one of those situations where it was kind of like these older church people or whatever, and even though I told them like, hey, I'm going around telling people how to get to heaven, they still wanted to sit me down and explain the entire gospel from beginning to end with me, or whatever their interpretation was of it. And it was essentially, just explaining works righteousness to me, explaining.
Do you ever bring that up to them? Like, hey, listen, no, I did for 4 years. I know,
Well,
I know about it.
So you said they're older folks?
Yeah, it's always well, I mean, you're never going to find someone who's not willing to immediately give you some advice, which I think is kind of strange, because I'm the one here living my best life, and
let me tell you something.
I'm the missionary here, but
what if they have a voice they want to share, but they don't have the legs for it? They want you to carry their message.
yeah, I mean, I think that everything's a sort of learning experience. So I don't like judge these people for it. I think it's important to share the gospel with yourself, every once in a while. So I don't blame them. And I thought it was beautiful. It's nice because when I approach people, they sort of understand that I am an ear to listen to, and I'm not going to be around for very long. So they kind of they're very open, and they're very honest with me very quickly.
Yeah.
So I get to see people for who they quote unquote really are. I get to see the raw material of these people. And so, so that's just what happened then.
Shouldn't it be that way with most strangers? Because, most people you see just, in the stores, on the streets, you only see them that one time in your life, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so after that, they drove me to a hotel, and they paid for a night for me, and they gave me a big bag of like canned vegetables and canned fruit and this big large print Bible, because I guess they thought I needed a Bible. And
did you have one?
I had 2.
Well, now you got 3, buddy.
Now I have 3. And
you just go around.
Never have enough.
You're like, you just have this. All you have is this stack of Bibles. You're
Right.
like, they just keep giving them to me. I don't know what to do.
I don't know what you want me to do with this. But
just leave it on the corner. You're like, I'll get 5 more this week, I guess. And then you just
yeah, and they filled up my gas tank, and they came up to me and was like, we're really blessed to have met you. We're really happy because not many people come by the church and wanting to sort of share in our ministry, and tomorrow you can come and to our church service. We have one at 8:15 and 10:30, and then they drove away. And
that's exactly how it should be. And you said the key word, small church. Like I said, the lines get blurred when you go big church, big money. And the funny thing is, like, Heartland is great, but when I'm like, you have a big facility, you have a lot of staff, you have a lot of things to cover as terms of financials. And I remember it was probably 2 or 3 years ago when we first started going. They have this thing where at the end of the year, the fiscal quarter, like in November coming up, at least they did it at the 5 p.m. service. They don't have that anymore, but they explained, and they were just honest. They go, listen, it costs a minimum $3 million a year to run this whole organization. I said, what? I go, like, it just blew my mind.
We got to pay the pastor $2.9 million, and the rest goes toward building costs.
Well, dude, even if he gets paid $300,000, I'm thinking that's the most you could ever make. If he gets paid $300,000, I'm like,
this pastor
what?
needs to make $300,000.
He needs it.
And so that's
right now.
That's exactly where the lines get blurred, because then it becomes a longevity thing. Then you're like, okay, I've been doing this for a year now. They paid me $300,000 this year. You're like, I guess I got to keep being good and keep doing the same thing I always do. And I'm not. The pastor was great, but then what happens? Then you get attention. You have an audience. You have people who look at you, right? The pastor.
Your pride gets puffed up or whatever.
And then you go, okay, there's bigger places out there. And then guess what happened? The pastor moves. Then he makes $400,000 a year at a bigger church where the lines get even more blurred. I'm like, there's a building out where I'm not going to say where we live because you don't need to know where I live, but in the area that looks like a stadium. And I can see it. I'm like, what is that in the distance? It's got a dome on it. It's a huge place. And I'm like, I swear to goodness, it costs like $10 million to run this place. So, as the money goes up, the expenses get paid out more.
And really, it's like I'll ask a small church for help, and they'll say, well, we're a small church, so we don't really like helping people. We're only helping our, the people that are in this church. And then you go to a big church, and all the doors are locked, and people are like, well, we're only going to help our members. We're not going to help anyone who's not a member.
You're like, you said you make a min of $10 million a year to run this big church, and you can't help one person.
How much does it cost to help one person?
Well, and
isn't it
church
free
isn't very
just
big.
to let someone sleep under your roof?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I'm surprised because I'll ask someone for help, and they like if someone asks you for a place to stay, at minimum you could be like, okay, either let me make some phone calls, let me ask my family, or you can camp out in my backyard. Like that's the bare minimum like that you can do for someone, and a lot of times people just don't want to do it for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, the moment, in order to, I think to conclude, I think the moment you can help people is the moment we get rid of, you quit blurring the lines between helping others and how much money can I make from doing said act of helping someone, which I think that gets blurred when you get bigger. That's why I don't like to follow, like I said, big church pages or big pastors in general, because I'm like, I'm only funding you. The more I watch this video, or the more I do this, the more I pay for a ticket, if I ever think about it, I'm only funding you. Like, I'm not actually helping anybody. And then one of them was like, what'd you say? You said, I'm going to perform miracles. And he goes, I got people you need to come meet.
Yeah.
Right? Boom. I say, oh my gosh, I want to be a better Christian brother to other people. And they're like, join our class for a 1 week stay. It's $1,200. And then we'll teach you at the end how to do miracles. That was legit the pitch.
Yeah, what's throwing me off? I actually have another friend who's doing something similar, who's just like traveling off of the kindness of other people. And like every time I like talk to her now, because like first we met just because we were like dating, we went on a few dates, and we really connected because we're both big Christians, right? But anyway, she's traveling, doing her thing right now. She's done like a few mission trips, and now she's doing I'm not sure if you heard of them, but a YWAM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a YWAM?
And those cost like
Young
$3,000
men and women or something. Young men and women. Young women and men, I think.
Yeah.
YWAM. WYAM. I don't know. Young men.
I just want
women and
yams.
men. And non-binary people. Add that.
But it costs $3,000 for a course.
Oh, good gracious.
It's like college, basically. But so why isn't it cheaper, And she recommended that to me, and it's not the first time she's recommended it to me.
Because they make
like,
$400,000.
I'm like, yeah, for $3,000 for one course. Like, I'm going to JUCO right now, and it's like, maybe it's like $1,000 a semester,
Cut that
I
in
can't
half when you
afford that.
include books.
I can't afford to include Jesus in my life, apparently.
Yeah,
you know?
it's ridiculous.
Like, why isn't there something free out there, Church is free, granted, but I wish that Jesus could be more accessible, not just, through a 1 hour service, once a week, but like, I wish there was some way that you could do it every day.
Welcome to the ancient art of psychedelics. That's why I figure, because I mean.
Well, and prayer's a great tool, and fellowship's an even greater tool.
Well, yeah, the moment he mentioned in Christian culture back in the day in that episode that there was tested psychedelics in these materials, I was like, okay, well, I guess lines could be blurred between the war on drugs and altering your state of mind, and I remember somewhere, I can't remember where I talked to him, but he was saying that like where we live is like really strict on obvious, like weed, for example, because I make a lot of money off of it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. I'm like, is that the only thing this is here for? So like I said, I don't know if I'd ever personally try it. Maybe if I did, I don't know, I'd be older, maybe go through a little bit of life.
One of my favorite quotes is by my former agriculture teacher in high school. I'm not sure if you remember him. Do you remember him?
I remember
Mr. Hines? Okay, you might remember this quote then. Don't do anything I wouldn't do twice. I mean, you gotta try it, right? As long as it doesn't cause permanent damage.
There you go.
Because then it becomes a serious issue. You know, I don't want cancer. You know, my family's gone through a lot of cancer. But honestly, though, after hearing all these things, like, why not try it just once?
Yeah.
As long as there's something positive, as long as there's something to be gained.
Psst, I can hear that in my headphones.
Sorry.
I just heard. Anyway, but that's
My
all I had
bad.
to talk about. Lane, I think you're awesome. I think you're doing things that are great.
Thank you.
I think we love you, and we hope the best for
I
you.
love how you're bringing up a lot of things that haven't been thought of, especially just in ordinary everyday life, and just between us two. I don't think we've brought up a lot of things that have been brought up today, you know, and I feel like that's, I don't know if that's exactly what you're shooting for, but that's what I picked up from it, and I want more of it now. I really do, you know?
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm
All
really
right.
looking forward to that van trip.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome to join us on a road trip, right? I mean,
Yeah, we got to plan it out.
Yeah.
We
Like,
could do it
yeah,
after this. Because I got
absolutely.
like an hour and a half before I got to go to work. So we got to do a lot of talking. We got a lot of planning to do for goals, personal development, all that kind of stuff. So I got to piss like a racehorse. And the last thing I want to say is the one thing that stuck out to me with what you're doing is that you can have everything and still have nothing.
That's right.
And you can have nothing and have everything.
amen.
All right. Black Lives Matter.
That's right. We love all you
Yeah.
guys. Thank you guys. I love you. I
Love
love
you.
you. All right.
That's a wrap.
It's a wrap.